week's episode of Dragon Ball Super! Goten and Trunks travel to the planet of Patafu, while they stow away with Monaka, who seems like he's going to be a standard main character from the series at this point. It wasn't weird enough that we already had Jacko the Galactic Patrolman, but you know what? Who cares? Let's throw in another alien with another ridiculous quirk, and that quirk being his gigantic nipples. This episode right here was a lot of fun. It's basically the build-up before we get to the next arc of the series, but I love when we go to these random alien planets. They always are a lot of fun, and in this week's episode, the setup was very simple. Monaka goes to Bulma to deliver some sweets, Goten and Trunks get into his spaceship, end up getting trapped, and they end up going all the way to this planet called Planet Patafu, which just so happens to be where this evil villain that Jacko Galactic Patrolman is looking for. A villain who goes by the name of Gryll, who's this big, blue, bulky alien who's looking for this special object known as the Superhuman water, which supposedly is going to increase his powers 100-fold. Now, these guys really aren't all that powerful. It's made evidently clear when Goten and Trunks arrive to the planet and start kicking all sorts of ass in an action scene which was really enjoyable. It actually made me want to see more of Goten and Trunks teaming up. It's always really fun to watch them fight because they definitely fight like a team. There's also a couple of other new characters who are introduced in this episode aside from the villains. There's this one old alien who's living on the planet of Patafu who goes by the name of Potage, and apparently he's this old martial arts enthusiast, and I think he might even belong to the same race as Sorbet. He kind of looks like a space koala in many senses, and this guy's just really funny, old, and cantankerous, and he's actually protecting the secret of the superhuman water, which apparently the key to get to that is a pacifier that he wears around his neck. But Gryll and his men actually managed to kidnap Monaka, as well as getting this secret key so they can unleash the superhuman water, which actually takes the form of this like weird purple goo, which can sort of like take over someone's body and then clone them and turn them into like an evil version. But Gryll manages to actually like manifest this power and keep it on his body the entire time, and it almost seems like he's actually the one who's controlling it. Or maybe he's actually being controlled by the superhuman water himself. Now, by the end of the episode, everybody knows that Goten and Trunks are on this mysterious planet. Goku can't do anything about it because he's training with King Kai, and it is worth mentioning that he is getting his powers back. It looks like he's going to be healthy, and it looks like that whole thing that happened in last week's episode is just going to be completely swept under the rug. However, it is still important to know that if he ever does overexert himself again with the Kaioken technique, he is going to have to bring himself back to speed. And he's also curious as to where the hell Whis and Beerus are. He mentions that they're just completely missing at the moment. I have a feeling they're getting things set up for the next big arc of the series, which has been teased to include future Trunks. But before we get to that, we're going to get some cool action scenes which are going to involve Vegeta. He's going to be going to the planet and having to go with Jacko the Galactic Patrolman, which leads to a lot of really tense, funny scenes because, of course, the relationship between these two characters isn't exactly friendly. They can't even really talk to each other at all, and you can tell that Vegeta does not want to be here whatsoever. But when he arrives to the planet, he does what Vegeta does best: kick alien ass and look cool doing it. Not to mention, he's getting ready to fight against the main villain of this arc, Gryll, that is suddenly when this superhuman water starts to take over his body, and it creates an evil purple clone of Vegeta. So it looks like it's going to be Vegeta versus Vegeta in next week's episode, and you know what? I'm pretty damn excited. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super? Aside from all of the cool action scenes with Goten and Trunks, there were a lot of little moments in this episode that I really appreciated. I like the fact when Goten and Trunks actually busted into the back of Monaka's spaceship, Trunks found this sword, which of course was a nice reference to the fact that future Trunks uses a sword, as well as sort of a tease for things that are going to be happening in the next arc of the series. Toei animation, that was really clever, and I really appreciate that. Other than that, I really love the new setting, the planet of Patafu. I always love when we get to see some brand new aliens. Akira Toriyama's designs are always very distinctive, and you can definitely tell when he's created these characters. And these alien guys look like they're going to be really cool. While I don't think they're going to be super powerful, it is going to be sort of like a nice action-oriented arc before we get to the next part of the series. I mean, this is leaps and bounds better than anything we saw from the Pilaf episode in last week's episode, but still, that doesn't mean that episode was bad either. I still really enjoyed that one too. I can't wait to see, though, how Vegeta is going to end up taking down this evil clone of himself, and I can't wait to see how powerful this clone is going to be. I imagine it's not going to be as powerful as Vegeta. If it is, however, this could end up being one hell of a rough battle, because if it's able to manifest his powers, like, completely, that means he could become a Super Saiyan Blue, which would be really intense to see Vegeta fighting against another version of himself with those powers. It could potentially lead to one of the biggest action scenes of the entire series, and I think that would be really great. Overall, I just love all the uniqueness of this episode, and I can't wait to learn a little bit more about the character of Potage, who seems to be protecting the superhuman water, and why the key was actually a pacifier. Something about that is really strange. It's either going to be something that ties into his backstory, or it's just another one of those weird little goofy things that Akira Toriyama just loves to throw into his series. But honestly, even if it does that, I'm okay with it. It just makes it really distinctive and memorable. I really hope that this Gryll villain is going to end up being a little more threatening in the next episode, although it's mostly probably just going to be Vegeta versus Vegeta. But I can't wait to see how powerful this guy really is. But still, I mean, it's just him and his goons using guns. Not to mention Goten and Trunks just completely wiped the floor with their group, although they made a quick escape and they were able to get the superhuman water, but that's mostly just because they captured Monaka. And Monaka is just great. He's a great side character for the series. It's really funny that now that they know him personally, they're just going to keep calling him for deliveries all the time, which I think is great. There are a few moments where Monaka actually, like, gets away from his, like, timid nature, like when he's listening to the radio, and he actually gets to see that one of his letters that he sent in was actually being read over the air, which wasn't a question or anything crazy. It's just him sort of, like, saying what he does, and he was just really impressed with that fact. Monaka's a really funny character, and it doesn't just have to do with his ridiculous oversized nipples. I also really liked the training sequence with Goku, basically doing what he always does on King Kai's planet, where he fires a big ki blast or a Kamehameha and then tries to block it or either stop it himself. And I love this scene because, of course, King Kai, Gregory, and Bubbles are having to constantly hide behind all of these barricades as soon as he's training. There's a lot of good, funny, goofy moments in this week's episode, but there's also some good fighting and action scenes from Goten and Trunks in particular. I loved watching them beat up on those goons. I would have really liked to see that scene go on just a little bit longer, but it's a nice taste. And if anything, like I said, this episode right here is sort of like a teaser to things which are going to be happening much later with the arrival of this future Trunks arc. I cannot wait to see how that's going to be dropped. Not to mention, with future Trunks returning, he's actually going to finally be able to interact with his younger version, like actually have a full-blown conversation with him. So I really can't wait to see how that's going to be handled. So all in all, this was a pretty satisfying episode of Dragon Ball Super. A lot of fans, I think, are going to consider this one a filler episode, kind of like the last couple of ones, but honestly, I'm really enjoying this right here. It's completely unpredictable, and I didn't expect an arc like this to show up before we actually got to the next big arc of the series. So I'm really appreciating it. I love the humor, I love the action, I love all the new alien characters. Just a fantastic episode of Dragon Ball Super. Not a perfect episode, mind you, but one that all Dragon Ball fans should definitely check out at least once. So I'm going to give this week's episode right here a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Dragon Ball Super fans. You might see something you like. But if any of you did watch this week's episode of Dragon Ball Super, why don't you tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below? Did you have a favorite scene from this episode? Maybe a favorite funny scene? Do you want to see more from Goten and Trunks? It looks like they're definitely going to be making a big appearance in next week's episode. And how do you think Vegeta's going to take down his evil clone? Do you think there's going to be another twist to this arc? What do you want to see from the conclusion of the Planet Patoru arc before we move on to the future Trunks arc? Please tell me in the comment section below. You guys are awesome! Thank you for watching this review. I really appreciate it. If you want to help subscribe to the channel, maybe you could hit that like button right down below. Maybe you could subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be able to see all of our latest anime and manga reviews and our weekly podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. Make sure to check that out. You guys can find links for that, all types of other cool stuff in the description box below. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!